So good. Sorry, just a second. Right. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here. My name is Stefka Domuzeva, and together with my colleague Tantamne, also from Climate Kick, we would prompt you a little bit to discuss today about how should we identify and structure the demand for climate services, and more particularly into the field of flood mapping and predictions. So maybe a little bit of context. What is Protect for those of you that are approaching the project for the first time? We are a European funded project. We aim at raising awareness and building capacity on the role of pre-commercial procurement, or PCP, and in particular its role in stimulating the climate service markets and procuring climate services. So within the framework of Protect, we are gathering public authorities and mostly public procurers around what we have now defined to be 4 different challenges. For instance, they are those that you see behind there: the flood mapping and prediction, the climate resilient water solutions, sustainable and resilient infrastructure, and lastly, fire predictions and prevention. Within the framework of the awareness.
Stefka,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We still see the first slide.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Okay. Now you should be able to see the next one, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So within the framework of capacity building, what we do is, for instance, organizing this training curriculum, of which today's webinar and workshop is part. And the first phase of the curriculum took part in early spring, and now we are here to take it up a little bit further. And we already had one session that was considering advanced aspects of pre-commercial procurement, and now in the following 4 sessions, we would focus on how to structure the demand for climate services in the 4 domains that are pertinent to the 4 challenges that so far have been identified under Protect as potential challenges where procurers have interest to pre-procure climate service. These are some of the questions that we would tackle today. I would say tackle and not necessarily answer. To some of them, we would try to provide answers, but mostly the scope is that we all think about. You still don't see the new slide, do you? Okay, so these are the questions that we would be discussing today, and we would look into what is the role of flood mapping and prediction in addressing climate services? How is it prioritized by different authorities across Europe? And why are we talking about climate services? And why is it important to talk about climate services? And what is the role of the climate market and the role of pre-commercial procurement as a tool of enhancing the climate market? Last but not least, especially in our interactive sessions, we will all discuss together a little bit how is the awareness of vulnerability connected to flood are distributed within your organizations, and what outcomes we can take and bring further to fight these challenges. Sorry, I have some issues with sharing my screen properly.
We can see your screen, actually.
Yes, but you cannot see the slides moving, can you?
No, it's still in the questions.
Apologies for that. Okay, now it seems to be working with that. All right, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about flood mapping in both its in flood prediction and why is it a challenge that we are focusing on. So maybe most of you here know quite about flooding, probably more than we do at this stage. And it's what I would like to explain a little bit is how did we select the challenges. So all the challenges, including the flooding ones, have been selected based on feedback from procurers, also based on the gap in the market analysis in a way to identify potential climate services that could further be developed to reach closer to the market ready level, and at the same time being services that correspond to concrete needs that are felt by public procurers that are part of the project. So, for instance, the main concern, the main pain point about flood mapping currently is that it takes too long to map, and that there is also the lack of a coherent there's the lack of a coherent and single database where it could all be stored, and it is not possible to easily retrieve data and quickly, especially in case of extreme events. So this is the framework we are working on, and you could keep that for later, and we would come back to it. Floods, however, are of course a concern for many European countries. Within Protect, we did a research on how different regions, mostly throughout their adaptation strategies, how do they perceive floods, and how do they qualify them as risks or vulnerabilities. And for instance, we see that, well, of course, it's a major issue in a lot of marine and coastal zones all across Europe. But then there are some other fields where we don't really think of when we think of floods. For instance, the impacts flood have on the energy and utilities and the energy stability and provision, or the impacts that floods could have on agriculture, forestry, and other land use, for instance. But also, what we'll come back to later is also the impacts that these different fields themselves and services related to them can have on flood and on flood-related services. So here we will talk a little bit about the title of our workshop, how to structure and optimize the demand for climate services, and why would we want to do that in the first place. Climate services, what are climate services? The climate services are not defined by a single definition. In fact, there are many definitions in the field, and it seems that the scientific consensus has not really gathered around one. However, the one we would use for our purposes today comes from the 2015 roadmap of the European Union on climate services, and it focuses on several aspects to consider in identifying if something is a climate service or not. So first of all, it's important to know that climate service is based on climate data, but not exclusively, and very often we talk about climate data that has been combined with other types of data, for instance, socio-economical one. Then what I find interesting is that the shape that the climate service could take could be something as an application, as a projection, forecast, but even something as simple as, for instance, a report or economic analysis, which is not something that most of us are used to think of as a climate service. And lastly, what climate services serve are the broader needs. So they are not just taking data and producing it to create more data to serve very strict and specific needs, but they're supposed to, one way or another, serve the society at large. This being said, it is not really straightforward to put one's finger on what is a climate service and what is not, and it makes it very complicated due to the fact that the market of climate services is very much untapped and underdeveloped. We don't really, well, most of the people that need climate services, so for instance, public procurers, they don't know where to look for climate services. There is not a single taxonomy of climate services. There's not a single definition of climate services. So it could be very confusing, but at the same time, the reason why this is a problem is that they cannot know what is on the market if they cannot identify the market and look into it. This has partially been remediated by taxonomies. You may be familiar with different taxonomies of climate services who have the aim to tell you what are the different climate services, I guess, based on different definitions in various fields. It again maybe doesn't really help that there are many of them, and one of them is indeed the definition that we and the taxonomy we have used in Protect for Climate Services, and this is a part of it that you would see. A little bit of background on that. So the idea of creating a Protect taxonomy based on other climate service taxonomies was that we needed to somehow present a catalog of currently available commercialized climate services that are on the market, so that people can look into it and try to define their needs, because it's very often they don't even know what is possible. So it is very difficult to match your needs when you don't know what they are and what is there on the market to correspond to them. We created the taxonomy, matching it on other taxonomies of climate services, but we narrowed it down for the scope of Protect. So it is only climate services. It is only climate services where Earth observation plays a role, and it is mapped against the 5 definitions, the 5 domains Protect was based on, and now this includes also the 4 challenges that we would continue further with for the coming PCPs. However, this is the whole taxonomy you could find on the CMP, on the Community Management Platform of Protect. It's available for free. If you want to join the community platform and have access to Protect materials, don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you're not already part of the community, of course. So this is just an extract of the taxonomy, and it is not really a random extract. What we have here are some services that can serve as inputs to flood mapping and predictions. And again, a lot of them are very obvious. For instance, urban modeling, but I tried to highlight some that I find more interesting that we don't necessarily think of. For instance, urban greening can be very interesting to foresee how flood mapping would develop, and data for urban greening can, of course, feed into flooding. It's also very relevant for insurance and for nature, for insurance and for other insurance purposes, for instance, for risk modeling, but it also goes quite broader than that. All this is to say that when we look into, for instance, what we have today, flood-related climate services, we don't only look at flood-related climate services. That data is very often interoperable, not only by standard, but also by definition and by the Go, and that we can often use data from other services into, for instance, flood mapping and prediction. However, something else that we could also do is using this data, using the data of climate services based on flooding into other services. So we should look broader the market. So for instance, it could be useful for, again, this is another extract of the taxonomy, and I've tried again to highlight some of the more interesting aspects from it. And we are talking, for instance, for site selection for renewable energy, because of course we wouldn't like to select the sites that is prone to flooding. For instance, soil condition monitoring could be something that could be based on flooding and on flooding data. And another interesting aspects that I found are things like permitting for buildings and forecasting of climate drivers for migration, which is again something that has big potential, big market. It's not necessarily the same market as the markets of flood mapping and predictions, but these are also services that could feed in from that. The bottom line here would be, from having you look at these Excel sheets is to keep in mind that the offer, but also the demand, are often more broader than what we imagine. So in identifying properly the demand for climate services, identifying our needs within the organization, for instance, by talking with colleagues, by talking with other departments, we can get to conclusions and to definitions that we wouldn't have done otherwise. But however, this is difficult to do if we don't know the market, if we don't have these catalogs or taxonomies, or if we cannot be provided with a broader view of what is currently there and how can we make use of it, or what is not there, but how can we maybe co-develop something that is not already on market level. This is, of course, the case of pre-commercial procurement, but I would say that the whole procedure is applicable much beyond that. Next, I would invite you to explore processes and identify externalities. Here we would be talking mostly about the context of pre-commercial procurement. As you probably know, pre-commercial procurement is stimulating the development of climate services through co-development, which means that we have very strong co-development line, as normally the procurer set the baseline of their needs, and these continue to be developed further with the potential service providers, in a way to have a solution or a set of solutions that identify specific needs or specific set of needs as felt by the procurers. For more information about that, and for a little bit of an introduction to the interactive session, and to how to make sure that diving together, at least, to how to make sure that the demand is comprehensive enough to fit in all of our needs, but also specific enough so we can also find the solutions on the market, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague Tantam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefka. I hope you can hear me. I will move a little bit so that you see me centered. So that was really setting the scene and the context, and trying to get into the flesh of the topic. Maybe just a word, as has been signaled. In fact, you know that the Protect project is working towards preparing. Gathering a community of public procurers, and not only public procurers, but mostly public procurers, and preparing them for the exploration of PCP as a pre-commercial procurement for climate services. And I think what Stefka has been saying is that, in fact, before you even get into the details of how you're going to formulate your demand, how you're going to cluster your needs across Europe between different procurers with similar concerns, then you need to take a broad view of your demand. So that doesn't mean that you need to put too many things into a single pre-commercial procurement process, of course. But what it means is that if you're going to do this kind of soul-searching effort of understanding, for instance, how does flood mapping and prediction help mitigate some of our risks and help get a better understanding of a number of connected issues, then it's very important that each of the procurers individually, and then the community of procurers working together, gets a view that is as comprehensive as possible of the different units, for instance, within the organizations which are concerned by this topic, or who should be concerned by it, even though it's not part of their mission normally in everyday life. So I think that's really the context in which we're trying to have this session. It's very much designed as an interactive session, so meaning that essentially the information provided has been summarized by Stefka. What we hope for now is, even though we're not so many this morning, but that this is a beginning of a conversation between among the procurers and also other actors who work very, very closely with public procurers on those topics, and that we can help you navigate and probe the space of what are actually all of the actors that should be brought in. So the questions that are going to come in this interactive session, they are essentially triggers or provocations, so to speak, for a richer conversation. So please do use them as catalyzers. But what we're really interested in is hearing your experience and your understanding of your own demand, and maybe to try to push the boundaries a little bit together. So I'm not sure that the link for the pre-commercial procurement call has been shared yet, but I would suggest that we do that towards the end of the session and that we delve into the topic right now. So just to be sure, Kevin, are you? Can you post the Menti link, please? Sure, if you have it at hand.
I think that I just shared the link, and I will proceed to share the Mentimeter.
Yes. So in the chat, I hope you all have access to the chat. There's a link to the Mentimeter, and the questions are going to come in a logical sequence.
So I'm just sharing the main question. Can you see it?
Yes, only. Is that the first question?
That's a good question. Because I could share also the back end of the Mentimeter, but it will not.
That looks like the penultimate question of the second session, so that's why I was asking.
Okay. Strange. So let me try it again.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Let me know if it makes sense that I maybe share the screen of the Mentimeter as we all see it, or...
Yes, that would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, I think it could be a good idea to. Okay, so is it coming in?
Give me a second.
I think I have it if
I reload. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
That works.
Maybe I can start with the first question.
Right, so I mean, that doesn't appear as a question, but in fact, the question that is supposed to respond to is, do you have in your organization enough data to identify the high-risk flood areas in your city area? And if you're not a city, if you're an energy agency or a utility, then in your scope of activity. So please choose the answer that best corresponds to your appreciation. So if you think that you do have enough data right now, it doesn't say whether you think you're using them optimally, but if you think you have enough data, please go towards the right-hand side. So 5, strongly agree. If you really think that there is a big gap in the availability of the data, then you go to 1 and anything in between.
We'll be happy to delve further into what are the reasons behind that, but I think what we're looking at here is really the if you have enough data or not, and we would be happy to hear the reasons for actually for both.
Let's leave another 30 seconds for that. So I think that
Can we see how many votes do we have, or is it just the average that we see? Okay, we see them all.
We'll move to the next one.
Yes, so let's take next one as well. So how are you made aware of the flood risks? From where, whom? So the source, it can be internal sources, it can be your own unit, it can be another unit within your organization, or it can be external sources. And in which formats data? So we don't need a wealth of technical details here, but in which kind of shapes you get those data?
Maybe if you can tell us if it's, for instance, more of an in situ data or Earth observation data, and which are the sources in either case. Of course, as long as you're familiar with that.
And after this second question, I suggest that we start the discussion and maybe ask some of the participants to share why you answered as you did. Competent authority. Let's leave another minute for this.
Maybe something worth complementing is for instance, if you want to tell us a little bit about the infrastructure that you use, because we saw that one of the major gaps identified during the Pain Points webinars with different potential procurers was the lack of one and only platform that they can insert the data they have and from where they could get relevant information. Okay, so I think we can start a bit of discussion around those two questions. So the first question was whether you thought you had enough data to address the need for a flood mapping and prediction. So could you please share why you put 3? I mean, 3 is of course in the middle, but it would be interesting to see where you feel that you have a good quality and good quantity of data, and where you feel that there are gaps. So it's not yet about addressing the gaps, but it's just identifying them. So does one of the participants want to comment on their answer? Otherwise, I can invite nominally. No, for instance, Haris or Christina, would you like to comment on your answers?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. This is Haris. Actually, we have, let's say, good quality data, but usually each year we have updates about the areas that they are under risk of flooding. That's why we put 3. So in the next years, and due to the climate change, maybe we'll have more areas under the risk. That's why. Thank you.
All right. So you feel that you have a correct visualization, understanding of what is the current risk right now. So there is no surprise on that, but it's really the trends and the evolution, and if there are new zones that might be affected, that is not information you have currently.
Yes,
Right.
yes, exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Yes. And I think Christina, you're from the same organization probably. So otherwise, I don't know if you have something to add to that. And otherwise, I can ask Rojic.
No, yes, we're from the same organization as Harris. So yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Are there other participants in the call who would like to comment on that, on their experience of the gaps? So what we often hear from local authorities in particular, that they do have now pretty comprehensive coverage of the areas at risk, but what they don't have is necessarily the granularity that they would need to take effective action. That's one of the things, and the other thing that they often surface is the time, the delay between the data and the effective activation of resolution of response. So those are two things which are partly linked, of course, with the nature of the data, with the operability of the data, the capacity of those data to activate the adequate response, and also to the timeliness of them. So just the time to process them and organize them in the chain. So and on the second thing, I was actually intrigued about where you got the data and the awareness of the fraud risk. So there, on the one hand, you have official channels and competent authority. On the other hand, was this response about the media and social media. So it's actually probably not addressing exactly the same kind of information. So maybe Harris and Christina, you mentioned probably the official channels and competent authorities. So in your case, is it something that is systematically communicated, or is it only in case of a crisis? So can you actually have a kind of forecasting and planning ahead of time, or is it something that is more in an urgent response mode?
Actually, we have this data available on the site, on the website of the Water Development Department. But yes, it's not something that you can forecast if you have extreme weather situation in the, let's say, in the next winter. But again, I would say that we are very happy to have all these data related with the floods. I mean, we have the action plan, we have interactive maps and GIS data, so we're okay, I would say.
Okay, so actually, I think it's a good time to go to the next question. Kevin, if you can move to it, because that's really how this concerns and generally the data you get about the risk of flood and are addressed internally within in your case in your agency and across different departments or organizations. So just to clarify that, I don't know in detail, how complex the organization is at your agency in Cyprus, but if there are different departments which are working on those same data, what we're trying to figure out is what is the degree of coordination and synergy in analyzing those data. And when we say other organizations, that's of course the water agency, as you mentioned, but also if there are other organizations in connected sectors or in the same areas where you're operating, who are on the receiving side of the data, is there any coordination in the way you're addressing, processing those data, turning them into a risk analysis and more concretely into an action plan? So that's broadly the space where we would be interested to have your inputs.
related in Cyprus, I would say the competent authority, the water agency, is the main responsible for creating all these data related with the risk. And of course, we other organizations can have contribution on this data, but I would say only the water agency is the responsible authority to announce official data related with the floods.
I see.
Yeah.
So would you say, in fact, if you think, so I'm sorry, it's kind of basic questions, but
Yeah.
really to have a bit of a candid view on that. So one, I would suppose that the risk in your case is mostly linked with the infrastructures of production, or is it also with the distribution networks? And I think the question common to both is whether the warnings and the decisions for action coming from the competent authority, or you feel that they are completely adequate for you as an organization to protect your infrastructures and your networks and to take the right adaptation decisions, or are there things that you have to do by yourself and you have to convert the alarms or the directives from the competent authority?
Actually, as an agency, we don't have the, let's say, the power to announce to the public or the different organizations that we're going to have extreme weather conditions. This is something that let's say the water agency, together with other organizations of the state, of the government, they are doing. In our case, we are trying to support public authorities to be prepared on these events through climate energy plans, but that's our role. Yes. We don't have anything to do with the implementation of infrastructures to restrain flood risk, except our collaboration with the local authorities or sometimes with the public authorities in the aspect of introducing climate resilient actions like natural-based solutions and any other actions for reducing this risk.
I see. So just to make sure, and please, anybody in the call who's intervene and ask questions as well. So this means that, in fact, when there is an extreme event and, for instance, a risk of flooding that is going to affect your activities, so in fact, do you have any means in real time to take response, urgent response actions, or is that also in the hands of the competent authority? And so so basically, what you say is that you can advise them, support them on what you can do on the longer term, but in the short term, are there measures that you can take by yourselves, or you are actually entirely dependent on another competent authority to protect your infrastructures, for instance?
Do you want me to answer, or?
Yes, for instance. Yes.
Yeah. Again, as an agency, yes, we have. When you say means, in our case, what do you mean? I mean, if we have, let's say, a plan, or when we have these weather conditions, these extreme weather conditions, or.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
In our case, yes, internally as an agency, we have a plan in order to protect ourselves, but also our premises, our offices.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, we are not so affected when we are going to have these flood events in our area. Mainly the impacts are in the city, in the roads, or in basic infrastructures of the state.
Right. So that is not in your hands. That's what you're saying. It's
Yes, exactly. I mean, we are discussing about basic infrastructures. It's up to the competent authorities and the government.
right. And currently, do you have I think we can move to the next question, Kevin, but actually that's in the flow of the conversation. So is there are you having bilateral exchange with the competent authority and the water authority on those topics, or are there also I mean, working groups or task forces in which you and other agencies in Cyprus, in fact, would come together in a dialogue with the competent authority to see whether there is an interconnection between your needs, their needs, and or is it mostly bilateral?
No, actually, we have good cooperation with the, let's say, with the authorities, and recently we organize a meeting together with the local authorities that they are facing these events, together with the competent authority, in order to discuss and find solutions in the different areas. So I would say that we have started these meetings, and we have some first good results in order to implement further solutions in the different municipalities or local authorities.
All right, but in fact, that is still between you as CEA, for instance, and the local authorities. There are not necessarily other agencies in terms of waste management, or
no, and the competent authority, the water development department, which is the competent authority about the floods.
Okay, so that's bilateral, and maybe I think on the last question of this section, Kevin, you can move to that one. I think we were curious to see. So I'm sorry that actually I'm interacting mostly with you because the other procurers are not there today. But in the so as an agency, you have customers in every sector, I suppose. So are they feeding you back on particular concerns they have in the situations of flooding, on which they would need maybe a different response from your part, or or through you from the water authority, or is it something that is not happening really, and your customers are informed of the emergency plans, and there is no feedback from them? Because what we're looking at is actually to see whether the current situation is optimal, if you want, or if in fact there are sometimes not just data, but also specific needs from different users, and energy users, for instance, that could benefit from being taken in, and that is not currently happening.
Maybe also there's something other participant that they want to answer, but in our case, I would say again that as an agency, because we don't have this let's say power to have this collaboration and the announcement of the different data to the different stakeholders that they have these impacts from the floods. I would say it's better the competent authority to have this to give these answers. But I'm sure that different stakeholders that they have these impacts and they have their opinions. Sometimes they don't have the step to share their feedback.
Yes, and I understand that. I think I do understand that you don't have the mandate and the control of that. It was more your experience as being, let's say, a bit downstream in the chain of information. In fact, if you felt as an agency that there are some informations from other stakeholders, I mean, not just the agency, but other stakeholders on their needs, that could be useful for you to to articulate your intervention plans, for instance. It's not, I mean, I'm not asking for criticism of what existed, but it's just in your experience whether you feel sometimes there would be such a need.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I mentioned before that we try to organize and bring the different stakeholders from local authorities, from the planning department together in order to share these worries about these risks and starting to find solutions. This meeting, I would say, it was the first meeting related with reducing the floods in the different local authorities, and I would say that we had some good first feedback, and also we identified some barriers for moving forward. So this was just one meeting. Maybe other meetings will follow. And again, I mean, the consultation procedure is something that is missing in Cyprus, not only for the climate-related services, but also for other topics as well.
No, I understand that. Yeah. No, thanks a lot. Ana Lucia, I don't know if you are here. I was wondering whether in the work you did with other procurers on the same challenge, if there are dimensions that we have left out and you think would be useful to bring, just not yet going to solutions and improvements, but even in the status quo.
Hi, Dantam. I would say the possibility to interact and cooperate with other contracting authorities and with other areas that would suffer damage. So to establish also some actions between different first responders, for example. So this coordination, that I think that's important to take into account. So how the same information is gathered and provided to the different actors, let's say players in the event of a flood or a disaster, and have these notifications. I think that's something that has been mentioned several times.
No, thank you, Ana Lucia. Stefka?
Yes, I have a question towards Harris, and I'm sorry if that feels towards interrogation, but it's very interesting what you said, that you've talked with some authorities and that you have already started identifying barriers, and not really for the sake of being noisy, but I'm wondering what type of barriers did you identify? If it is more of an operational one, if it's technical, for instance, then lack of technical capabilities, if it's maybe a problem of mandate, everyone having their own mandates and maybe these mandates not really overlapping, so it's maybe even difficult to create a task force or to be in constant touch or to organize more stakeholder consultations. So if you can tell us a little bit more about that I think would be very interesting and very pertinent to what we are looking for.
Yeah, I would say we have different dimensions of barriers, but one that is, I would say, very important and very simple to solve, but we have these difficulties to find the solution, is how to clean the rivers. So the municipalities, they have their methodology, but the competent authority put some strict, let's say, solutions on how to clean this the riverbeds. So let's say this was a technical barrier on how to face these obstacles, or how to face actually how to promote a good solution to prevent floods. But again, also communication is something that is missing between them, let's say the local authorities with the competent authorities. I would say in the level of the public procurement, when we are discussing climate-related services, something that is missing is the technical capacity, but also the knowledge on how to implement this kind of solutions. For example, in if we're identifying an area that has a problem, either for floods or other climate-related hazards, we need to be able to identify the problem and to be able to identify the proper solution. And if we want to take this and translate it to a public procurement procedure, it's another element. I mean, you need to have the experts, you need to have the technical specifications, and afterwards, we need to have the capacity and the persons to implementing correctly the specifications that we are defining in the procurement. I will say it's a new topic, a very interesting topic, but we have barriers in the different stages and steps.
But thank you. That's really very, very valuable, and to be able to dig into that, and hopefully in the working groups on the challenges, that's one of the things that can be explored further. And probably the barriers you're meeting are probably quite common, but some of them may be a bit different depending on the type of stakeholders and the context. So I think we can move to the second part, which is a bit going forward. But in fact, you already provided some inputs that speak to that. So yes, I think. So the question is whether you are happy with the analysis and structure of the needs for flood mapping and prediction across your organization. So that's more the looking internally again. What I understand is that your reaction plan and how you process those data coming from the competent authority is very much unified within your organization. So meaning within the agency. But if you can just confirm, it's something where you see room for improvement, or is it? You think it's optimized at your level?
Maybe just to mention that very, very often there are two aspects of that. There is what we talked about earlier, which is, of course, the very common classical case where everyone has their own competence within an organization, and if there's a task force, or if there's an informal, well, actually more formal structure where this can exchange on certain topics, then it's easy to collaborate. But then it's also the informal side of things, where it comes, at least in some of the fields that we work on, it very much comes to the person to bring in some novelty. And sometimes you would just have a person on board that maybe has some knowledge about certain technology, or maybe it would be coming from another department, so they would know how do they work on that department. So that's also maybe a more informal side of things, which is I would say very important, but nonetheless, in an ideal world, it probably shouldn't be necessary. If we can only rely on the structure of the organization who foresees for, I can see Tantam smiling because he probably realizes that we are not in this ideal world. But I just want to say that these are two different aspects, and I'm curious to hear about either. But also we are talking about how can we implement changes within the organizations to reach a common goal.
I think it's a very, very candid question again, but can you name something that would make you move from 2 to 1? Apart from nothing is ever perfect, are there things that you can think of that could be supported to improve even further this analysis? In other words, we can move to the next question and then come back to that if needed. So yeah, so I think here it's probably we can skip that one because it was basically feedback from CEA. So yeah, so okay, so we already got those two responses. So how will you prioritize the needs for flooding mapping and prediction that you want to bring to a PCP process? So so again, the idea of I don't know if you're very familiar with the PCP process, Charis and Christina, but in fact, if not, there are wonderful webinars done by your colleagues from Corvus, which are available for to see. But essentially, I think the idea is really as we said at the beginning, both internally in terms of how you can explore your demand more precisely within your organization and feed the dialogue with the market with this analysis, but also across a number of procurers across Europe with different situations and common needs. So here the two responses that have been put in. There's identifying where are the higher costs, and there's so negative impacts, well, of course, of flooding, solution, technical specifications provided. So that's quite broad. Are there things that you would like to comment and you have already identified as part of your demand you would like to explore further? I'm afraid it's again a question for Charis and Christina, but also the other participants in the call. Please step in if you have inputs on that.
Yeah, if I might, because actually we are not familiar with the PCP process, but we are familiar with the other kind of procurements that like the green public procurement or social, innovative, etc. And I must say that identify your needs, especially in the beginning, has to do with the market mature. If the market is mature to address these issues, or if the procurers they are aware about the different situations and they want to find and identify the solutions in the market. So speaking about the climate services, again, I would say something that we have many needs and many gaps. For example, again, I will say I'm not familiar with the PCP process, but what I'm hearing is that you need to investigate the first steps in order to identify your needs and your solutions together with other organizations or with the market.
Yes.
Again, these kind of topics needs to be developed in the way that if you're identifying your need, then you need a solution. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to quantify climate services and identify solutions, currently speaking. At least this is my experience.
Mm-hmm. No, I think your experience resonates a lot with the feedback we're getting, and I think that's the reason why. And again, I won't attempt to summarize what the PCP process is in 2 minutes now. But in fact, there's really the idea is that that's one of the topics in our experience climate services where the supply and the demand sides are struggling to in a way they're waiting for each other in many ways. So. Have a lot of climate services of all kinds which are being developed from Earth observation data and other data, which are in a way they're probably useful somehow because they start from actual observations, they start from scientific models, etc. But in fact they find it difficult to reach the final users. Sometimes it can be because of the degree of technicity of their offer, because of the formats, a number of those barriers. But there is also, in fact, a difficulty on the demand side, which is that, and that's what we've tried to start exploring together. In fact, the demand side doesn't always structure optimally what would be the need for climate-related data, and even less what could be facilitated by services, which again are not just the raw data, but are really ways to assemble and process the data and make them actionable for by the final user. And in fact, when I say it's chicken and egg, that's why in fact the PCP process is can be very relevant, because in fact before you as an authority or an agency say, well, this is the service we need and we would need this and that with this degree of accuracy, you probably need to know, but what is possible at this stage, or what could be possible in the next 2 or 3 years. And that can happen only by a dialogue with the providers. But then the providers need to have a place where they can come and talk with demand owners like you, like cities, like other sectoral organizations, to see where would be the priority needs and how they can be clustered. So that's really the idea. So I think today we've tried to explore a bit how to help the demand side. In fact, in this case, you, for instance, as an organization, to make sure that you haven't left some of your needs out that could be helped by climate services, and then that gradually the working groups can structure them in a way that asks clear questions to the demand side. But then there's going to be iterations with providers who come not to say, I have the solution for you immediately, but this is the things that we know how to do, and those are things that we could develop if the need is there. So in a nutshell, Ana Lucia, I hope I didn't say anything heretic here, but I think in a nutshell, that's the logic of having a PCP in this topic. I hope it makes sense. In fact, we're already a bit over time, but so I think, Kevin, the following questions I think were probably for next steps. So just to give an idea what was going to this. So the potential barriers or challenges in implementing PCP. So I think that's a question that can be discussed a bit later with your organization in particular, because that supposes that you get a bit into the more of the details of how a PCP works. But again, we're happy to provide you with the information that has been made available by our colleagues from Corvus in particular. And now we are at the end of the presentation. So I will leave the last word to Stefka. Just on my side to thank you for accepting to play this game. I know it's a bit we've been overusing you, Charis, and Christina, because you were the procurer on board, but that was really useful for us. At least I hope it was for you. So yes, Charis, please go ahead.
Yes, just to say that let's say in order to have this stage with the PCP, I mean, the procurers need to be trained. Because you're right, the providers will come and say, yes, I have the solution. But maybe this solution, if you cannot understand the technical specification of this solution, etc., you will say, yes, okay, maybe this is good, but maybe this solution is not enough for you, is not the suitable one. So again, I would say that in all the different types of procurement, even this is GPP, innovative or strategic, I mean, more or less they serve the same purposes. We need the procurers to be trained and to know what kind of solutions more or less they are going to address to the market. And again, I would say that climate-related services are not so easy, in the meaning that even it's very difficult to certify these kind of solutions. We're speaking about climate services. And that's why we want from your side to offer this, let's say, the first, specifications or the technical capacity to the procurers on in order to empower this knowledge, and drive the market to this demand, but also to mature this side of climate services.
Thank
That's
you.
all.
Thank you
And
very
thank
much,
you.
Carlos. Thank you. I would like to slowly but surely moving towards the closure of today's discussion. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank, well, in particular, Harris and Christina for contributing to pretty much the core of today's event. We do agree with you. I think that well, on the theoretical part of things, it is something that we are trying to work on. It is something that PCP is trying to remediate. On the practical side of things, I think we have your contact. We will try to provide you with materials and information, but don't hesitate to reach out to us if something is unclear, or if you think that going through a bilateral discussion could be easier for everyone. I very much agree with what you said, and it is something that we observe again and again, and something that I found very interesting that we didn't mention is that well, it is very common indeed that procurers don't have the capacity to figure out what they want to write in and what they're procuring, and that's very often the case. But sometimes it's not the case, because they can get someone to write the procurement terms for them. But what I heard about recently is that then it sometimes stops there. So they don't have the capacity to evaluate if what they're getting is what they asked. So this is also something to maybe keep in mind down the road through the process. And on this remark, I would like to thank you, everyone. Don't forget that we have more webinars coming tomorrow on climate resilient water solutions, as well as next Thursday and Friday on infrastructure and fires prediction and prevention. And down the line, we'll have another on data certification and what procurers should need on data certification. Thank you very much. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we hope to hear from you soon. And if you want to stick around for the following webinars, please do so. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you.